Thank you for joining us at Beerfish Fanatics. And this episode is actually brought to you by Whisker Secret Tackle.
So make sure you guys go to whiskersecret.com for all your catfishing gear.
Enjoy the episode, guys. And welcome back to Beerfish Fanatics. This is part 3, the final of the trilogy that we did at the Midwest Fish and Wildlife Convention. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed at least the first 2 episodes. If you haven't checked those out, make sure you guys go check that out. This is the last part of it. Hopefully you guys really enjoy and absorbed as much knowledge about fishing and everything that myself and Fishing Kit did. So other than that, enjoy this episode, guys. All right, guys, welcome back. We have a gentleman actually I wanted to speak with because I might be going to your neck of the woods. So that's why I kind of wanted to. Oh. I'm glad I grabbed him, or Jeff grabbed you for us. So we have Dan Isermann.
Yep.
Up there in Wisconsin. And are you fisheries biologist? Correct?
I'm a fisheries research scientist that works at the University of Wisconsin, Stevens Point. I run a research unit there for the U.S. Geological Survey, focused on fish all over the state. So we do a variety of things. A lot of our work's focused on Green Bay. Mm-hmm. Quite a bit of work focused on Lake Winnebago and the sturgeon population there. And then the other big focus of our work is in northern Wisconsin on walleye and muskie populations. So quite a bit of different things that we cover.
You're like out of the camera, kid.
Well, I'm trying to be compliant.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. All right, you're good. Sorry.
But yeah, anyways, I digress. So what's your favorite part of your job, like on a day-to-day basis?
I mean, the big thing for me is I enjoy fishing myself, and so working with the resource. Wisconsin has just a tremendous variety of fishing opportunities and really passionate groups of people that utilize those fish populations in a variety of ways, not just recreational anglers that we'd be familiar in most places. In the northern part of the state, a lot of the fish populations are very important to tribes, and then we have one really unique fishery that's occurring on Lake Winnebago right now. The Sturgeon Spearing season started Saturday, and that's something, if you've never seen it before, is worth the trip to see. It's quite a spectacle and really important to the local economy and people around there. It's a tradition for a lot of families that have been doing it for years and years. And
so they spear it.
Yep.
All right, we're back. Ran out of batteries, the juice on that. What were we talking about?
It's weird talking about the Sturgeon Spearing season.
There you go. So does it come? Okay, so how does this sturgeon? Do they come up super shallow when they're spearing it? I'm just curious.
So Lake Winnebago is a very shallow system to begin with.
Okay.
The fish move into the rivers there to spawn, and a lot of that they can actually stage in those systems. So the lake is broken up into different zones. The harvest is very tightly regulated to prevent over harvest. So it's a tag-based system similar to what most people would be familiar with, like deer hunting. Mm-hmm. Somewhat limited entry on portions of it where there's a lot of fish, and the opportunity to harvest is a little bit higher. But yeah, people chainsaw big old holes in the ice, like basically you're looking at a giant aquarium, and water clarity plays a really important role in how effective people are. So if you just have a year where the water's pretty dirty, it's a lot tougher conditions, and if you get a clear water year, and it can be easier. And obviously ice conditions can be problematic. You have a fairly warm winter and don't have thick ice, it becomes a little bit more of an issue. But yeah, just a tremendous, I mean, I've gone over there several times over the last few years. We do a lot of our research there. It's also a great source of information about the population that helps us understand what's going on, so that the DNR can make sure that they're harvesting the right number of fish, and so that fisheries are going to be there for future generations. Cool. So they're pretty susceptible to overharvest. They live a really long time, up over 100 years, and wow. They don't spawn every year. They don't mature until they're pretty old, and so they have some things working against them in terms of how many fish you can actually take out of a system. A lot different than a bluegill that might live in Iowa, like 8 years old, and they're spawning every year, that kind of thing.
They don't spawn every year? How often do they spawn?
Females are every 3 to 5, and males are more like every 1 to 2 years, and it varies among individuals. So just for females, it takes them that long to build up an egg mass that's millions of eggs, and an egg mass, a big female like a 70-inch female might weigh more than 30 pounds of just eggs.
Wow.
So
Jeez.
it's a lot of, but they have very low survival. So it's kind of like similar to a walleye, muskie. It's sort of a lottery. You cast a lot of eggs out there, but
Gotcha.
the chances of any one of them making it to adulthood is really, really low.
Huh. Freaking, like, us being Iowa guys, we have no idea really about sturgeon. I mean, we got some sturgeon here and there in the rivers, but,
Yep.
like, for us, sturgeon fishing is not really a thing. And I feel like this spear fishing thing, is that kind of unique to Wisconsin?
It is. There is another fishery that occurs in Michigan, but in a lot of places, sturgeon are, in individual states, are listed as species of special concern or endangered. There's a lot of recovery programs going on in various states, so it just varies. And in Wisconsin, Lake Winnebago is a system where there are enough fish that we can allow some harvest, but there's also many populations where that's not the case, and
Right.
so it's a very unique thing. I mean, I'm not 100% sure, but there may be 2 places in North America where you can do it that I know of. So a pretty unique thing that happens.
Yeah, I find it fascinating because, like you said, there's not very many areas that you can go out and do this.
Yeah, it's pretty different. A lot of the other stuff that one of the other really great opportunities for folks fishing now is the Whitefish fishery in southern Green Bay. So that's a really prominent ice fishery that's kind of emerged. I'd say it's probably been over the last 2 decades, but just tremendous numbers of fish in the southern part of the bay, and it can be really exciting. Sometimes you can even get into them where they're in shallow enough water where you can sight fish them, and they're really good to eat. Really nice white flesh, and
Yeah, a friend of the show, D Yang, shout out to him. He always catches. He has a YouTube channel and he catches the whitefish. I think we were talking this. I think last or 2 podcasts ago. So maybe you can help us. What's the difference between whitefish, Cisco, and a Tulip? We're like, they're similar, but what's the dang difference? We don't know because we're from Iowa. We have no idea.
yeah. So they're all Coreogonids. They're in the same family. A Tulip is, I will say, a local terminology that is another term for a Cisco.
Okay.
So like Ciscos and whitefish are different, but in Minnesota, I worked in Minnesota for 4 years, and a lot of the folks there called Ciscos Tulips, and so they really are the same species. But yeah, they're cool water fish. One thing that's different about them is they spawn in the fall. Instead of in the spring, and so there's a few species that do that. Lake trout are also fall spawners. So, and one of the really unique things of southern Green Bay that hadn't happened in a long time is we now have whitefish that are coming up into these tributaries out of the bay to spawn, and so that was a behavior that historically happened, and then we had really no evidence for quite a while, and then they've started to move into those rivers. So there's actually really shore-based fishing opportunities in that fall window where people are fishing for them in the rivers, and then in the Fox River in particular, fish are staying in that river all winter long, and so people are now catching them through the ice, and even into the spring when walleyes are running, there's still some whitefish in the river that people are focused on. But I'd say the bulk of the ice fishery happens out on the bay itself, and there's just a ton of guides and opportunities for folks that maybe it's your first day and you don't know what you're doing or where you should be or how to do it, and people are coming from all over to do it. So, and they're big fish. I mean, 17-inch fish and bigger, and they put up a pretty good fight. So
Well, we just had Mark on earlier from South Dakota, and he was saying how some of their ice is actually almost gone. Certain bodies of water. How's the ice? Because right now, what are we, late
Yeah.
February.
Mid-February.
How is the ice holding up in Wisconsin area? Because the reason I'm asking is personal, because I wanted to go up there in a couple weeks, and I was
Yeah.
just wondering, how's the ice holding up?
So I live, I work in Stevens Point, and we've actually had a pretty good stretch of pretty cold weather over the last 3 weeks. And I was actually out fishing on consecutive weekends, and I mean, we went from maybe like 12 inches to 18. I'd say in the southern part of the state, like Madison, it's been a little warmer. I think there's probably still a lot of ice, but maybe not. It's certainly not as much. Green Bay is always tough. You get on those big bodies of water, you have to be really careful because wind and, there's open water usually out there, and you've probably seen on the news people get rescued on a fairly frequent basis, and that's just really a tough thing especially if you're not there, and you're showing up and you're naive to the situation. That's somewhere like we're even really cautious if we're planning on doing anything over there on the ice, but pretty good ice, I think, especially if you were thinking of like northern Wisconsin or something like that. There's people are driving on it in most places without even thinking about it. So don't need an auger extension yet, at least around me, but some years that happens.
Okay, so do you guys really have a eel pout or a burbot? I don't know what you would call them in your area, because I know some people just prefer calling them one or the other.
They occur. I mean, they're obviously in the Great Lakes, and then in some inland systems they do occur. Kind of a limited fishery. I mean, I don't really purpose or specifically know anybody that targets them, and there's not a eel pout festival like there's on Leech Lake in Minnesota. That's not something that occurs. They're actually, especially within the Great Lakes, a sign of a healthy cold water ecosystem. They're a fish that's pretty sensitive to changes in the system, and they're really an interesting fish. We don't know as much about them as we probably should. They spend a lot of time in deeper water, and I'd say most of what we do know is on the main lake of Lake Michigan. But yeah, they're not in every lake, and there's a lot of lakes that don't even have the habitat to support them, and so I think a lot of people catch them incidentally,
right?
And most people probably don't necessarily know what they are.
I think they look cool. They're super cool looking.
They're
fish.
a really interesting fish, and we probably, obviously should know more about them, and there are people working on them around the Great Lakes to get a better understanding of what's going on with them, because as things warm up, they're a species that could really be affected by that, because they're a cold water fish.
That's cool.
So
I guess my last question, because this conference and everything, because we're getting all the states all around, people even from Canada and all that stuff, everybody's coming together. What is the biggest thing that you're taking away from this conference, would you say, meeting these people from different states, DNR, other fishery biologists? What are you gaining that you feel like this shit was, well worth it to get together in a sense?
Yeah, for me, it's a great place to get ideas. And a lot of times, even though our fishery populations are somewhat different, we're dealing with the same problems, like, and sometimes bigger picture problems that we're all dealing with. But I think it's just seeing how people are approaching problems. Our work is really focused on how to make fish management better, and in turn fishing better. That's why at least I'm in it, and that's the focus of most of our work. And so there's just a lot of different strategies, and maybe somebody is not applying this strategy in Wisconsin, but somebody is doing it in Iowa, and you get the chance to see like, well, what did they find out, and might this provide a tool that we could use somewhere else? And we're a tight community. Fisheries and wildlife is here as well, but a pretty small profession, and we're often working together either as an organization or as a group of people that's trying to protect or enhance fisheries on the same problem. So it's a great information exchange.
That's pretty cool
Venue, and I train students, to be the biologists of the next generation, and so they get to network and talk to people and see what it's like to be a fish biologist. And what other fishing opportunities are out there, because a lot of the talks are about fishing.
Yep, there you go. So you're training the next generation that's going to help my kids catch fish.
Yep, to keep those opportunities out there.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's why I love this. No, that's why, appreciate. Like I'm telling you, everybody, we want to be able to get you guys back on a Zoom podcast if possible, Dan, and then that way we can spend a full hour, whatever we can, and really dive into your location and just have a chance to just kind of pick your brains a little bit, because we get 10-15 minutes right now, but it's just kind of giving our listeners a tease and us
a little teaser.
Yeah, we didn't even get to talk about muskies.
That's going to definitely be on the topics of discussion on our next time when we get you on. So,
all right.
But other than that, man, thank you so much, Dan. I appreciate your time. I'll get all the information from Jeff, but it was kind of cool to hear about this, and hopefully I'll let you know if I hit up in that direction in the next couple of weeks. I'll let you know. Maybe you can point me in the right direction where the fish may be biting.
Yeah, I actually might be heading up there myself as well for a different outing. Not with him, but I think Whitefish is on the agenda, and that's something totally new to us.
Yep.
Because we're in Iowa, we don't have a lot of things that these surrounding states have, and it'd be really cool.
We just got nasty shad. That's about it.
There's some tremendous opportunities here too.
There we go, man. Thanks, Dan.
All right.
This episode is brought to you by Kalona Brewing Company. If you live in Eastern Iowa, make sure to swing by Kalona Brewing Company's tap room. Amazing food and amazing craft beer. If you live in Central Iowa or in the Midwest, swing by your local supermarket and see if they carry the Kalona Brewing Company line of beer. And also, swing by your local restaurants, local bars, see if they have Kalona Brewing Companies on tap. If not, make sure you guys request it. I kid you not, you won't regret that. Other than that, enjoy this episode, guys. I don't know if you listen to any of our podcasts. We're just simple people who drink beer.
That doesn't explain anything.
Well, I'm simple-minded.
Oh, okay.
I just, I do this just so I can learn about the good, hot fishing bites.
Gotcha.
That's why I do this podcast. That's pretty much it. And then I just talk to him, and he lets me know, and I go fishing.
There you go.
We just drink beer and talk fishing.
Gotcha.
All right, everybody, welcome back. We got Chris here. He's a fish biologist up there in Michigan. Is that correct?
So I'm officially with the Michigan State University. I serve as the director of the Great Lakes Acoustic Telemetry Observation System.
That totally doesn't sound like a fisheries biologist.
Yeah. Exactly. Sorry.
I am a fisheries biologist in my former life.
Take that.
I worked as a fisheries biologist actually on Lake Erie, helping manage the walleye population for about 15 years.
Cool. So what's your main focus nowadays?
So back about 10 years ago, I got involved with the study of tracking fish, walleye, in Lake Erie using acoustic telemetry. Did that for about 10 years, and then I had a research position with the United States Geological Survey, and then 2 years ago in 2019 I became the director of the telemetry system, and so I kind of oversee and help coordinate all the acoustic telemetry in the Great Lakes Basin.
Okay, so now that you've collected all this data, what are you doing with the data? Like, are you just putting it away somewhere and like, okay, I'm gonna go fish this spot?
Don't tell nobody.
And I'll tell my closest friends.
I've got a lot of books that I'm writing. And, no, so actually all the projects that we do, some maybe a little bit more than others, are focused on specific management questions. So in Lake Erie, we want to know, hey, when and where do walleye migrate? When do they leave the Western Basin? Where do they go in the Central Basin? How long do they stay there? And then when do they start coming back? And then we looking at things like, well, when they spawn, how long are they there? How long do the males stay on the reefs? How long do the females stay on the reefs? Which spawning stock do they go back to? Because there's like 7 or 8 different spawning stocks just in the Western Basin alone. There's at least 3 or so in the Eastern Basin. So that's really the impetus behind what we do, is addressing management questions. So when I was a biologist there were a lot of different management questions that I wanted answered. One was kind of, at what rate do fish die due to natural causes? So all these studies in one way or another link back to management questions that the different state agencies have.
So, if you don't mind, can you explain, because an idiot like me, I'm pretty sure we might have a few, I don't know, that's listening to this. So, Chris, what's this technology that you guys are using, that you're using? So can you explain a little bit about it? Because they're like, because some people like myself be like, tracking, how are you tracking this? What's tracking this?
Yeah, like, asking the question is one thing. How do you answer these questions?
Yeah, sure. So I don't know if you guys, travel around the Chicago area or any metropolitan area or take the Ohio Turnpike or something like that with the Easy Pass system. Okay. But you get on the toll, and if you have an Easy Pass, you pull up to the toll booth goes up, and you keep going on. Well, you're in essence a tagged fish. That toll booth is a receiver. The tag is your vehicle that you put that little puck up there, and you get a history of where you go, and they know how to bill you appropriately, right? So we do the same thing with fish, just on a much smaller scale. We'll put a transmitter in a fish, depending upon the size of the fish. The tag may be the size of a Tic Tac, or may be up to all the way the size of a AA battery. We'll put that in the fish internally and let it go. And then we have these receivers spread sporadically around different areas of the Great Lakes. So Lake Erie, we started out with a handful of receivers going across the different basins, and now we have receivers going across the whole lake. And so we've systematically been doing that on the other lakes. Lake Ontario's like that. Green Bay it's got a bunch of them. We're going to be working in Lake Huron, all throughout the Detroit River, St. Clair River, bunch of receivers. So in all total, we've got over 2,000 receivers deployed underwater in the Great Lakes Basin.
Wow, that's like a huge area to cover.
Yeah, and so the beautiful thing is like when I release a fish in Lake Erie, if it swims up to Lake Huron, like if it goes into Saginaw Bay, which they do, even if I haven't deployed those receivers, I get that data back because all the researchers are uploading their data to a database, and then I'm able to pull my data down from the cloud that relates just to my individual fish. And so wherever that fish goes, I get that information back. And the information is timestamped, so I know the date where it was at a certain receiver, and then some of these tags have special sensors in them. So there are some sensors that will tell us what depth the fish is, what the temperature is, and then what's really kind of cool is like for some of the smaller fish we've been stocking, like small lake trout or Cisco. We're starting to reintroduce Cisco to the Great Lakes, which is the primary forage base for most of the Great Lakes. If that fish gets eaten, there's a little predation tag on there, and it changes code. And we know when that fish is eaten because a different code starts going out. So, relating it back to fishing, all of these studies in one way or another are providing information to the managers to set harvest limits, to get a better idea of what we call their spatial and temporal ecology. Just a variety of different questions. It really depends on the questions those research biologists and managers are most interested in.
Blown my mind in regards to technology nowadays. That's incredible.
So one of the really cool projects that we were doing on Lake Erie, and it relates to fishing, is that we wanted to see where the fish in the Western Basin were actually spawning. So are you familiar with the Western Basin?
Not really.
No idea.
So in the Western Basin of Lake Erie, probably the epicenter of walleye fishing is in the Western Basin. That's where all the spawning reefs are and the rivers. They catch, on average, 2 million walleye in Lake Erie on an annual basis, right? Just the recreational fishery, and there's a commercial fishery to the north. Anyway, what we did is we went out with fishermen. They would catch fish. We'd put these tags in the fish, sew them back up, put them back in the water, and then we would see where they went and spawned in following years. So we're letting the fish tell us, hey, which spawning group do you belong to? And so the managers can say, hey, which stocks need the protection, or which stocks are we most concerned about, and maybe which stocks need some real rehabilitation.
Do a lot of what other states use this type of technology besides?
All of them.
Oh, okay.
All of the Great Lakes states are involved with this telemetry to one degree or another. So up in Lake Superior, they're working the Stamp Sands area, which is up in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, working with whitefish and lake trout. In Green Bay, I think you talked to Dan Iserman here. releasing whitefish, muskies, walleye in Green Bay. In the main lake, there's a lake trout project. In the Huron Erie Corridor, which is the Detroit River, St. Clair River, lake sturgeon, tracking just the movements of these just big fish, right? Lake Erie, a whole slew of species, and then Lake Ontario as well. So, whole bunch of different species.
Wow.
And all the state agencies, federal agencies, and what's really cool is like the Great Lakes are like the UN of fisheries management. The United States agencies and the Canadian agencies that work really well together, and so we do a lot of this research collaboratively.
Okay. Huh.
I'm blown right now, like the technology that's involved in tracking fish.
It's amazing. Like, so when I started, the longevity of one of the tags, back in 2011, of one of the tags was 4 years, right? So that's pretty good. Now that's up to 10 years. Like, the tags keep getting smaller, they keep getting more powerful, battery life keeps getting better, and we're just able to learn more and more about, what these fish are doing throughout their life cycle.
Yeah, I mean, because you're saying if it's that small, what kind of battery? I mean, is it lithium battery? What
Yep, that's exactly it.
Yep,
yeah, they're lithium batteries, and so the detection range, or how far a tag can be heard by a receiver, varies based on the size of the tag, which of course is going to be influenced by the fish, right? And then it's also going to be influenced by the water quality. So in a place like where do you guys fish the Great Lakes much? No. Okay. So if you were to go fish the western basin of Lake Erie, for example, it's very turbid. You can't see down very far, right? Okay. On a good day, you might be able to see the cavitation plate on your motor, right? If you were to look off the back, you could maybe see down 2-3 feet. All right.
That's about the average Iowa water.
Okay. All right. So now, if you were to go, say, up to Lake Michigan, Lake Huron, Lake Superior, now you can see down to the bottom of the lake in 50 foot of water.
Wow.
Jeez.
So in a place like that, where there's not a lot of stuff in the water, the signal travels much further than in your Iowa pond, where you can't see much, which is the western end of Lake Erie. Or Green Bay or Saginaw Bay. So we have to have an understanding about how far each of these tags can be heard based on their size relative to where they're tracking the fish.
Interesting.
So what we'll do too is we'll put an external tag on the fish so that an angler knows that, hey, you caught a fish, it's got an acoustic transmitter in it, and send it back to us and I'll give you $100. Because we want to get those tags back, because in some cases those tags actually are storing the data we'd like to get our hands on, or in other cases we can go ahead and redeploy that transmitter.
So that's important when they catch, because Iowa has that, right? I've seen tags,
and we got a few tags like that.
Because the people always ask, "What do I do with this?"
Yeah, and that's a good question. So like, usually on those tags it says to report the tag, call this number, and people are always like, well, what should I do? And I was like, well, I want you to do whatever you would do. If every walleye you catch usually takes a visit to your cooler, as long as it's legal, send it to the cooler. Just let me know about it. But like if you're a largemouth, if you're a bass fisherman, we've been doing a bunch of smallmouth studies. Hey, if you typically, release your bass, if you can get the external tag number for us, let us know. We'll know which fish it is and release it. But if you're going to harvest it, go ahead and harvest it. As long as, you're playing within the confines of the rules of what you're allowed to be doing. Yeah.
Yes.
I'm not giving you a free ticket to do whatever you want to. It just, so that's kind of what we do.
Has there ever been a time where, like, somebody reported a tag, like, wait a minute, this fish should only be this size, which is under the regulation or whatever?
Oh, I thought you were implying that we did not know how to measure fish.
No. I'm just saying, like, has anybody, like, oh, I got this tagged fish, I'm going to take it home, but...
So that is one thing we're actually kind of careful about. Like, we don't want to be tagging walleye necessarily that are below a size limit, particularly on a fishery. Not to say it doesn't happen, but we typically try to skew it towards not doing that, because then it puts somebody potentially in a bad position. Because what we want to do is, like, we want that transmitter back, right? So then somebody could just say, oh, I caught this fish. Well, all right, how do I know you caught this fish? And we've had guys try to, so there's the internal tag and the external tag, and we've had somebody try to turn the external tag in, and then his buddy tried to turn the internal tag in, and we're like, oh, wait a minute.
It's the same fish.
It's just, yeah.
Good try, buddy.
Fool me once.
Right.
So
That's pretty funny, man. So right now, Chris, what in your neck of the woods, what is the hot bite? What is people fishing for at the moment?
Oh, well, I mean, so throughout the Great Lakes, walleye fishing is just like through the freaking roof, right? So they had good ice in the western end of Lake Erie. I think that started breaking up. I think I've seen in the news they rescued like a whole bunch of people, off. It's so funny because like everybody wants to go ice fishing, right? Yeah. And so everybody can only go on the weekends a lot of time. Well, guess when the south blows are usually on the weekend. So you got all these poor guys, waiting all week long to go ice fishing. So yeah, that's what happens. A big ice crack will open up and they'll start drifting away. The other big one is the whitefish, and the whitefish through the ice has been kind of like a new phenomena to some degree. And it's like, I'd say within the last 10 years, it's like really exploded. And I don't know if it's a function of just better gear, like guys just figuring it out. They tend to be a soft biter from what I understand, and with a lot more of the electronics, they can really sense like, So
we're gonna have to try. Yeah, we've never caught whitefish, but that's one of, I think, a possibility of us trying in the next couple of weeks. Hopefully.
Yeah, I think Green Bay and Saginaw Bay are the two places that have been pretty hot, and it's like it sounds like when you get into them, it can be a slugfest.
That's
Right.
exactly.
And they're phenomenal to eat.
See, I've never had one.
Are you seriously?
I'm dead.
Yeah. What would you compare it to?
Yeah, thanks.
It's a very white, a very it's got like, at least the way I've had it, both baked and like fried, or smoked is phenomenal, right? Like just about any fish smoked is phenomenal, but whitefish smoked is phenomenal. It's a big white, fleshy fillet. Yeah, I mean it's.
Is it flaky like a crappie, or is it a little more toughness like a walleye?
To be honest with you, it's more like a walleye. Yeah,
Okay.
for sure. Yeah. From what I understand, I haven't eaten a lot of crappie. I grew up in New Jersey, so didn't grow up doing a whole lot of fishing, let alone for crappie. But people say it breaks apart really easily, a crappie fillet.
Yeah,
no?
it does. It does.
Yeah, no, this is like you can like peel off, the chunks of muscle, the myomeres.
Okay.
So it's usually pretty rigid.
So it's got a little bit more of a bite to it, because some people would go as far as to say as crappie are mushy.
It can be.
Yeah, it's in terms of its texture, but like it's not a fishy taste at all.
Right.
Yeah.
Gotcha. We gotta get you back on. We, like I was telling everybody else, like, gosh, we wish we can talk like.
Well, yeah, we're supposed to do like 10 minutes with everybody,
Yeah,
but we're
we've been
pushing
going-
over
yeah, we've been going
with
over.
everybody.
Jeff's been looking at us, dude. You guys are idiots. Cut it off.
We're gonna be here till like midnight.
But it's
at
okay.
the rate we're going.
But we'd love to get you back because you guys are just honestly wealth of knowledge for us. For just a normal general fisherman.
Yeah.
That doesn't know much what like Fishing Kid was saying previously, like what happens behind the scenes. You guys really know the ins and out of the fisheries and why certain ones are succeeding or not. And that's why we'd love to get you back on if we get an opportunity and just kind of get a little bit more information out of you.
Yeah, I mean, most of us are fishermen, right? That's why we get into this field, right? And then, like, to me, it was like I learned about science. I was like, oh, this is pretty freaking cool.
Yeah.
And like, so now the next step is like, how do we get this information out to the anglers? And so like, we're slowly doing that mostly through the state agencies. Okay. Like we publish the papers, right? So that's one thing. And sometimes like an in-fisherman or, another fishing periodical will pick them up, but this is also like a really great way to get the information out. I was at a meeting once and my kids happened to be there and some guy, I introduced myself to him. He goes, Chris Vandergoot. I was like, yeah. He goes, I've been reading your stuff on walleye fishing. I just said, I should stop right there. I said, I'm going to go get my kids. And I'm just going to say, I don't know this guy. But just to show you that I'm not, the knucklehead that you think I am. So anyway, yeah, it's, we love doing it. I mean, and we love to interact with angler groups and just kind of.
Yeah. And the cool thing, like I said, we have, Jeff is a staple of our connection with the Iowa DNR and everything. And having him, having us here, I think it's going to help build the rapport with you guys and the fishing community. Hopefully they'll listen to this or watch it or whatnot and gain some information, like you're saying, that will help them understand the whole fisheries and just the whole system itself.
I've been doing, like makes me sound like an old guy, but so I've been, I've been working in fisheries since the early 2000s, right? It seems like through the years, the scientific literacy of anglers has just continually increased. And like, I don't know if it's an outlet, like we were just talking out there, like if it's like these podcasts and these shows, like where they start integrating that into what they're doing, right? And I think that's kind of like the cool thing about it, right? Because you're helping us, we're helping. It's a mutual relationship, and so yeah, this is great. Thanks for having me on. I'm sure you got my name here off the video, so you can look me up if you want.
Well, we'll just ask Jeff.
Yeah, we'll get all your contact
This is the
information.
first time I met Jeff, and apparently Jeff is very good at convincing people to do things.
He is.
Yeah.
He is.
It's that smile.
Yeah, he's pretty good at that.
Yeah.
I agree with you.
I mean, you're like a tall dude, and Jeff freaking is like, holy cow, Jeff's a freaking giant.
And we're 5-foot homies. So it is what it is.
All right.
All right, thanks, Chris.
Cool, thank you.
All right, everybody, welcome back. And we have Joe. Are you okay? I hope I don't mess this up.
Just let him introduce
Yeah,
himself.
introduce yourself, because I've been introducing everybody as a fish biologist, and then
He's like everybody's a fisheries biologist.
yeah, and then I find out half of them were like, no, dude, I used to be.
Well, as it turns out, I used to be.
Oh shit! See, it's a good thing we did that.
So
Thanks, Kit.
I am what's called a fisheries biology supervisor. So I run a research unit, or supervise a research unit, which basically means I sign time cards and I approve expenditures and make sure that everyone follows prescribed rules.
So we got the head honcho.
So you're in charge of the
Yeah.
fisheries biologists.
Well, yeah, we have a group that works for us, and I actually work on the inland side of things in Ohio, which in Ohio means reservoirs primarily, but also the Ohio River and inland rivers and streams.
Kind of like Iowa.
It is.
Yeah.
It's like Iowa without Lake Erie. It's
Right.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Yeah.
Interesting.
Okay, so tell us about Ohio fisheries.
Yeah, so one of the things that Jeff really wanted me to emphasize, why he asked me, I'm here from Ohio, and I was really looking to talk about Lake Erie, something that I'm not actually sort of in charge of. And so
Hey, talk about this thing, even
Yeah.
though you're not in
yeah,
charge.
the beauty of it is I had to I wrote for permission to make sure I was allowed to speak about it.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so as it turns out, I grew up like on Lake Erie, so I'm pretty familiar with what goes on up there. And right now we've got just absolutely tremendous walleye fishery up there. The population of walleye in Lake Erie most likely has never been larger than it is right now, at least in recorded history. And so it's just tremendous, the population.
Just naturally, or just
Naturally, no stocking whatsoever.
Okay.
No stocking.
All right, I'm
I
gonna.
want to say that again. No stocking
No
whatsoever.
stocking whatsoever.
There's another online resource that got one of our guys, and somehow they came out of that thinking that it was stocking. So
Okay.
no stocking. Good.
Yeah. Well, I asked that because I heard like, dude, I don't think they stocked up there. That's what I thought so too. But
Yeah. So we've had like 3 of the last 5 years have been the biggest years on record, and that goes back multi decades of doing trawl surveys in the fall. So we're looking at the little walleyes, the age zeros, and those numbers are as high as they've been sort of ever. And so just to give you a frame of reference, in 2003 we had this year class that was off the charts. People went crazy. It was super great. Everybody was excited about it because really the last big population was in the mid 80s. And so it had been kind of a long time, and fishing had been a little bit slower and that sort of thing. And 2003 hit, we had this huge year class, and it basically allows, it supports the fishery for a decade. You have great fish to catch for a decade. And so now we've had just crazy classes over, the last 5 years or so. And so, I don't know, it's like uncharted territory.
Okay, so I gotta ask you something. So out of I think our 6th person that we've had on today.
I think so.
Bat and cleanup. Or 6.
So I think 5 out of the 6 guys that we've had on, the species that always comes to mind is walleyes. So South Dakota, Michigan, Wisconsin, Ohio, I'm probably missing something else.
Well,
South
probably
Dakota.
Vandergoot probably
South
talked about
Dakota.
it too.
South Dakota.
Yep.
So it's like, what is it about walleyes that seems to be like a big draw for anglers?
It's the right place. I mean, like, this upper Midwest, that's walleye territory, big time. But one of the interesting things we do in Ohio, and this is on the inland side, so more of what we're responsible for in my office, or the office in which I work, is we actually do a lot of Saugeye in Ohio. So it's a Sauger walleye cross. We use walleye females, so we eggs from an inland source, one of our inland reservoirs. We get eggs from female walleyes, and we cross that with milt from male Saugers, which we collect from the Ohio River. And so what we found in Ohio is that these fish, I mean, they grow super fast. So like 3-year-old fish could be 24 inches or something like that. I mean, like just gigantic. Some of our lakes have 15-inch minimum length limits, and those are like 1 or just like barely 2-year-old fish that they're catching. So
how do you regulate that? Like between do you regulate them separately, or do you do walleye? And
so we only do
sauger?
Saugeye primarily. I mean, it's primarily in the Ohio River drainage. Because we want to make sure that they're genetically separated from walleye in Lake Erie, and it's also in our inland reservoirs, which tend to be pretty shallow, pretty warm, pretty turbid, and so it seems like the Saugeye is sort of that right combination of hybrid that it does really well in our inland reservoirs. And so a lot of the other states, like these other guys you've talked to tonight, they do maybe a little bit of Saugeye here and there, but they don't do very much. I mean, I think Ohio does as much Saugeye as done in other places. Okay. So, yeah, millions and millions every year. And we stock fry, we stock fingerlings, and so it's another really great opportunity throughout the state.
Okay, so is there like a separate regulations for Saugeyes versus a walleye or Sauger even?
Yeah, we have statewide inland regulations for all sander, so it'd be either Saugeye or walleye.
Okay.
And then there are specific regulations for individual places.
Gotcha.
Yeah, but it's generally a minimum length limit of 15 inches, just to allow them to get a little bit bigger before harvest.
Yeah. So what's like the benefit of crossbreeding these fish? Like, why not just stock pure walleyes or pure Saugers?
Yeah, it's a great question. Do you do this for a living?
I
mean, not a living.
Not for a living.
I
just drink beer and talk shit.
Talk shit, talk fishing, man. What the hell? It'd be the greatest job ever.
Yeah, I mean, well, if you could get paid for it, I mean, yeah. So the benefit is, for a long time we did walleye, and we did walleye throughout the state. We did walleyes in inland reservoirs. Again, not in Lake Erie. So we did walleye for a long time, and sort of these systems that it just didn't pan out really well because of sort of the characteristics. Again, that shallow, turbid, warm system. It's not a northern Wisconsin walleye lake. It's not that typical environment that walleye kind of do well in. And so it turns out that this hybrid cross does really well. Sauger tend to be more riverine type of species, so we don't quite have enough flow probably in our reservoirs. Okay. But Saugeye are hot in a lot of our reservoirs.
How big did they get, Saugeyes?
Not quite as big as walleyes.
Yeah,
like we catch 30-inch walleye up on Lake Erie. That's not unheard of. It's a pretty normal occurrence. The thing that's interesting about Saugeye is it's more about how old do they get. So a walleye will live, maybe not in an inland reservoir, but certainly in Lake Erie, will live over 20 years using otoliths to age these things and stuff like that. We see that, again, maybe not fairly commonly, but we do see it. A Saugeye, like 7 is extremely old. Like we might have an 8-year-old or a 9-year-old out of all the fish we've ever aged in our database. But it's like, if you see them get past 3 years old, that's an old Saugeye in our reservoir. So we kind of always think about this like live fast, die young type of thing. They grow up real fast. I mean, like 10 inches stocked in May, 10 inches in October.
Wow.
Kind of fast. So it's just really good conditions for them. A lot of forage, really productive locations, and they do real well.
Interesting.
Yeah. So,
like, do Saugeyes happen naturally at all?
Really low amount.
Okay.
Really low amount. So there's no, I mean, they can, Saugers and walleye can breed, and they do to an extremely low amount. Yeah.
Okay.
And so and that's another thing is we haven't observed a lot of like back crossing into the population where these Saugeye are then mating again with Sauger in a successive generation. So
Okay.
it seems to be like we stock these hybrids, they live for their couple of years, grow real big, hopefully get caught by an angler and harvested. Yeah.
Yeah. So speaking of hybrids, do you know anything about these hybrid striped bass or wipers?
Yeah.
I feel like there's kind of like a common ground with the Saugeye and these wipers, because like we stock them down here and they grow fast, they grow big, they live fast, die young.
Yep. So we kind of, when we do some hybrid striped bass too, and we'll do hybrid striped bass even in some places that have Saugeye.
Mm-hmm.
And we do that because we have just a lot of gizzard shad production. And so we're always looking to turn gizzard shad into sport fish. You know?
Right,
Like that's
right.
that's a trick. It's kind of like, medieval chemists wanted to turn lead into gold. We're trying to turn gizzard shad into sport fish for anglers to catch.
Yeah, that benefits us. So like a guy like me, like hell yeah.
Yeah. And so we kind of have, we like to think of, or we have thought of, hybrid striped bass as more of maybe a trophy opportunity. Let's let them get real big and see how that goes.
I like that. I
Yeah,
like that.
yeah, and it's the same way. You have 2-year-old fish that are 20 inches or whatever. They get big really fast, and we also have some anglers that target them like white bass. They'll pull them out at smaller sizes and use them as more of a meat fishery. And so you get this kind of divergent. Some people like to do this, some people like to do that, and so they do provide a pretty good opportunity where they catch on. It's not a huge program in Ohio, but it's certainly one of the tools in the toolbox. Yeah. Yeah.
So, what do you like to fish as an angler, Joe? I'm just curious.
Well, I have to tell you, I have 3 daughters,
Okay.
and they're pretty busy people. So some of my favorite fishing to do is destination fishing. So get me out of Ohio and do that.
Gotcha. I got 4. I got 4 daughters.
You got 4 daughters?
4 daughters. 8
You didn't
months.
figure it out after 3?
No, obviously. It's-
People always ask me, didn't you want to try for a boy?
Well, I mean, how do you try for a boy?
I don't know.
Well, they have those things that you could spin nowadays.
Is that right?
I don't know. I don't believe in that shit. I didn't try it. My in-law, Kim's wife, told me, you should spin your sperm and see if you can get a male. I'm just like, whatever, dude. It's just a 50-50 shot.
It is a
honestly.
50-50
Yeah,
shot.
I don't know.
Or do you just keep going until you get a
No,
boy?
done.
So some people try that, but you get to 4, you get to 5, you get to
Right.
6.
Well, see, he's got 0.
Okay.
He's got 3.
So
and I
you
got
must
4.
fish a lot then.
Oh, the funny story,
tell.
because I took today off, and I went fishing today, and basically, I got home 5 minutes later. He picked me up. We came here.
Okay. So how'd you do?
I caught a catfish through the ice.
Yeah.
So that was
Through
super
the
fun.
ice?
Yeah, through the
Okay,
ice.
cool.
Mini.
It's not really a common thing. Not a lot of people, at least, not a lot of people that I know. At
You
least
don't
in our
see it very
community.
often.
Yeah,
So-
we don't see it.
Yeah,
very
so in
often.
Ohio, the kind of like the inland ice thing, or I guess ice in general in Ohio, it seems to be like when it hits, like when there's enough ice, like people go, because it's not something that you can count on sticking around for a long
Right,
time.
right.
Mhm.
And so we had a pretty solid, can I use a horrible pun? Pretty solid inland year this year, where people were able to get out for several weeks. I think it might be kind of breaking up right now. Just we've had some warmer temperatures, and I think like Thursdays we're supposed to get like over an inch of rain or something. So that could be real bad for it.
Right.
And on Erie, there's been I think 3 ice rescues now
Jeez.
so far. So the ice just hasn't behaved up there this year. So it's been super cold up there, but just not great ice, too much wind and that sort of thing.
Big water.
Yeah, and so they've been fishing around the islands quite a bit. So you can like airboat over there or fly into Southwest Island and fish where it locks up in between the islands. But going off, sort of the access points has been a little bit more difficult. So you were asking about, or you said you caught catfish.
Through the ice.
Yeah, and so one of the programs that's kind of building in Ohio is blue catfish. We've been
okay.
stocking blue catfish,
Okay.
and we that program takes a while to kind of hit. You know.
Yeah, we had Ernesto on here from
Oh.
Kansas, and he was just telling us it literally it's over a decade for it to
Yeah.
really produce and seed.
Well, they started in the 1990, I think, is
Yeah.
when he said.
Yeah, so we started in Ohio in 2010.
Okay.
Was sort of our return to blue catfish. We did it decades ago,
Okay.
but it was more of a like stocking big fish and kind of like a trophy, like just like an instant trophy, something crazy to go catch. But we started in a reservoir just outside of Columbus, and it started in 2011, and just now those fish are getting to be like 30, 40 pounds. And so we're starting to see these fish really showing up. And so that program is expanding. Our hatcheries have been more consistently producing fry and stuff like that. So that's another one that's just kind of ramping up. But yeah, we've been learning a lot from the Kansas guys.
Yeah, that's so cool because I'm a big fan of blue cats. Here
Yeah.
in Iowa, it's not really a fishery that we have an opportunity to fish much. There's like 2 lakes in Iowa.
I think they
That
just
they're-
started stocking
like-
recently. I
Like
think.
4 years ago,
Yeah.
maybe.
Mhm.
And some people are catching them. They're 10 pounds, maybe.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm a big fan of blue cats. I go down to Kansas all the time.
Yeah.
Target those big blue cats in my kayak.
Okay.
One of my YouTube buddies, he catches blue cats out in Ohio, and then I just never really thought about it. It's like, oh, okay.
Do you
blue
know where
cats
that
in
is?
Ohio.
Where he's going? Is it Hoover Reservoir?
I have no idea. It's like a riverine system, like
Okay,
a
so-
river system.
Yeah, so the Ohio River's got
Okay.
blue catfish in it, but one of the cool things is like the reservoir we've been stocking now for a decade, Hoover Reservoir, which is just north of Columbus. It's actually a water supply for Columbus. It's a restricted horsepower lake, so it's 9 or it's 10. It's under 10 horsepower. So you'd be right at home in your
Right.
kayak
Kayak.
out there. Yeah,
Yeah, your pedal kayak, you're good to go, man.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
There you go.
So there's just a lot of different opportunities.
We might have to make a trip to Ohio, man.
It's only 10 hours and 15 minutes from here, so
Not too bad.
Did you drive here yourself?
No, we flew.
Oh, okay.
Oh man, well we got to get you back on. I was telling everybody because today we're supposed to do 10 minutes, but we've been going over.
Yeah, we've been pushing over
It's all right.
with everybody.
But we normally do our podcast with the guests. We usually do about an hour and a half to
Okay.
really dive in stuff. So I don't know if you have time. I'll get your information from Jeff for sure. We would love to get you back on just to kind of we'll do like a Zoom
Sure.
podcast or something just to really pick your brain.
Yeah.
Get more information, especially the blue cats. Now, I know you got him super intrigued.
I'm
Yeah.
a big fan.
We've learned a lot, and so I see you guys got the name tags on. So I don't know if you saw any of the presentations, but we had one about the Hoover Reservoir fishery
Oh,
and its development was on there, so you can go back and click through and see that one.
we might have to
Cool.
Yeah,
definitely
that's
do that.
a
So,
guy out of our office did that, so you have to check it out.
so
Yeah, I'm just glad that Iowa's dabbling into the blue cat thing. I'm not sure how that's going. Maybe that's something I can.
Future episode, maybe have a blue
There we
cat
go.
episode.
Good
I
question.
gotta bring Jeff in here. Like, come on, why haven't we
Yeah.
been doing blue cats for 30
Yeah,
years?
get that shit up
Yeah.
now.
Yeah, what have we been doing this whole time? You know?
Exactly, dude. But other than that, Joe, thank you so much for just joining us and giving us a little bit of your knowledge about Ohio and everything. But definitely got to get you back on,
I
man.
appreciate it.
All right,
Thanks.
Yeah,
thanks.
thank you.